Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. LinkedIn, yeah, I know. LinkedIn, connect and spam, connect and spam. I'm not on LinkedIn. I don't believe in LinkedIn. LinkedIn's not going to work. LinkedIn doesn't. Well, hold on. I've got the man, the myth, the legend, one of the true LinkedIn gurus, Mr. Richard Bliss. Richard, welcome to the show.
David, what a pleasure to be here. That intro, though, got me worried, but a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're trying to convert the skeptics. We're trying to convert the skeptics. You and I know how awesome and amazing LinkedIn is, and they're about to find out. So first question for you, how did Richard Bliss become Richard Bliss? What were some of the interesting pit stops along the way that brought you to the work that you're doing today?
I was an executive for a variety of software companies for almost 20 years, marketing executive in the tech world. And one day, as the chief marketing officer, I got fired and they gave my job to my wife. Yeah, I like that look.
Wow.
She is my ex-wife now. We are divorced. But it created an awkward situation where I suddenly found myself having to reinvent myself, because at the time I was the face of my industry. I was traveling all over the world, presenting, had my own technology conference. And so it became a bit of a challenge. And at the time, LinkedIn was seen as a resume, job site, that type of thing. And in that reinvention, I realized that this was one of the key places for me to start to teach myself how to build my brand online, not just in person where I've been traveling the world, but online and in a whole new space that I had never been in before. We all sometimes are forced into success rather than making a conscious decision to become successful. And in this case, when faced with a very unusual circumstances, I had to reinvent myself, and LinkedIn became the natural platform to do that in the business world.
So tell us a little bit about the source of your LinkedIn mojo, intel, because I've heard you speak in person. Absolutely brilliant. Very, very powerful. I've listened to a number of podcast interviews that you've been on, and I've never heard the answer to Richard, where are you getting all this amazing intel, this amazing scoop of the algorithm and the changes and the updates and looking in the crystal ball and kind of knowing what LinkedIn is coming down the pike, all of which we'll talk about. But how do you research all this?
Two sources. Source number one is my primary source, and that is I work extensively I'm here in Silicon Valley, and for years I have been working with executives and their sales teams at large multinational tech companies. And when you're in that environment almost on a daily basis, you get to learn things about what works, what doesn't, what challenges people face, how come things are affecting it. That's number one. Number two, though, that primary research comes from my sponsorship of a gentleman by the name of Richard Vanderblom. Richard Vanderblom is out of Spain. He's Dutch. Just Connecting is his company. And he has been conducting this research now for 4 years of deep dive into how the algorithm works in the field. We're not talking about what the engineers are doing at LinkedIn, because they're building the product, but how people are actually using it in the field. And Richard, along with a company called Authored Up, conducts extensive research. And I'm a partnership with Richard, and we use that research then for me to take it to my clientele and actually put it into practice, as well as so many other people are doing. And so that's kind of how that works. It's in today's world, nobody does it alone. Nobody goes on their own. You find success by working together. And when it comes to LinkedIn, there's so much to it. My approach, as David, as you said, is very different, because I'm not focused usually on the individual. I'm focused on the organization, how you can affect your own organization, how you can affect the organizations you're trying to talk to, but also how you build that brand in a way that it brings value to others. And so it's that practical application, and then the deep research that's being done by Richard Vanderblom, and a partnership where I help sponsor some of that research.
Totally fantastic. As I sometimes say about a different area of my world, I say, when you sit on all three sides of the table, you learn a thing or two. You learn
And
a
I'm going to
thing or
guess
two.
executives, sales, and marketing in my world, those are the three legs of that stool. And here's what I've discovered, David. I know we're going different places of conversation, but here's something important. And that is those three entities all have different goals and different objectives on LinkedIn. And oftentimes they're opposing each other, which causes some of those words that you threw out in the beginning of that skepticism. Because the marketing is trying to build brand. Sales is trying to open doors and close business. And executives are trying to find that thought leadership concept. And sometimes content and sharing and actions are counterproductive to each other. Those three sometimes are at odds. And so that's one of the things that I'm able to do is work closely with those organizations.
Yes. Before diving into some tactical wonderfulness and some future crystal ball things coming down the road, personal, and maybe you get this question a lot from your clients when you start working with them, personal brand versus company brand on LinkedIn. Talk to us about the different LinkedIn mechanisms and then how they should be considered. Like, is it the company first, salesperson or executive second? Is it the salesperson or the executive first, companies in the back seat? How do we kind of differentiate our activity and our profile, if you will, lowercase p on profile, our exposure on LinkedIn, personal brand versus business brand?
That's a great question because, like I just said, it depends. But for an executive, one of the things I tell executives who are hesitant to get on LinkedIn, they're like, look, I'm not looking for a job. Everybody's going to hit me up for a job. They are the number one salesperson. They are the number one marketing asset. They are the number one recruiter, the CEO, the senior leaders of the team. And their lack of presence on LinkedIn calls them to question their ability to lead a modern organization because it doesn't appear that they have it with them. I've asked young people, does it bother you that your executive doesn't know what a hashtag is? And I've seen their eyes get big and they're like, yeah, that would bother me. And yet to an executive, they're like, why do I need to know what a hashtag is? This kind of disconnect between relevance in today's world with social media, but more importantly, just modern communication tools is really important. So when it comes to this concept of brand, one thing, as I say, if you become interesting on LinkedIn, the company you represent becomes interesting. So personal leads the aspect of that. We do not want to just interact with, what's his name? Ned Riley from Groundhog Day, the insurance salesman guy, right? So often I see people on LinkedIn building their brand by pitching. They've got their phone number in their headline. They've got their phone number in their connection. They've got their call to action. Here's my business. Call me. Their video. Call me. You have to do. It's like, dang, I do not want to do business with you. I want to have a relationship of some kind, but come on. And so that's one aspect of it. And then there's this private versus personal, because some people are like, well, I don't want to share any personal information. I'm like, really? You and I are in a Zoom call right now. And yet I've already warned you that there is construction outside my house. We've seen kids wander in, pets wander in. We have been pulled into each other's personal lives so deeply that this blend between the professional and the personal has really blurred. And LinkedIn is a place for you to professionally share your personal side of your life. And so that would how I'd answer that. I'm sure, David, I'm not sure I answered the question, but I think that's a very important aspect of it.
You gave a fantastic insight around
you
that.
You say that
question.
to everybody.
I really don't. Some guests were on and I'm like, dude, that was awful. What are you doing? Why are you on the show? Like, what's going on? But not you. Right. That's the big difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, like Shep Hyken, for example. I mean, let's just call a spade, shall we? I mean, come on.
Shep called me about 15 minutes ago. Now he's going to be thinking. Right?
There you go.
Right?
We love Shep. Shep, we're just kidding if you happen to be tuned in. Do you love selling? I know, me too. Do you hate selling? I know, me too. Listen, fantastic sales book you got to get your hands on. How do I know? It's mine. That's how. Do It Selling is now available for sale. Grab your copy, grab all the bonuses, all the companion tools, all the training, all the videos that go with it at doitselling.com. See you over there. All right, let's talk about connecting the smart way from a prospecting standpoint. And part of my intro was this, what I call the cancer of LinkedIn, is all the connect and spam. Hi, I'd like to be your connection. Hey, are you happy with your phone service? Hey, look at my webinar. Hey, I have this PDF. Do you want it? And it's just horrible. You have such an insightful, brilliant, stepwise way that you're slowing down all of these things so that it becomes a human to human interaction. So walk us through, Richard, the influencer strategy that you shared so brilliantly with your clients.
And David, I get those, but the best ones I get are, hey, my product can help you get 100 new leads on LinkedIn every day. I'm thinking, did you even look at my profile? Anyway, here's the step-by-step. And this comes back to what you asked me of where my knowledge comes from. This comes from decades of me working in the sales and marketing organizations and understanding how the human nature of the sales relationship. So often on LinkedIn, what you just described is this ask before giving. I'm asking you for a connection request. I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you for an appointment. I'm asking. And yet you have no idea who I am. There's no trust built up here, and I have not given to this relationship at all. We need to flip that. And LinkedIn provides the perfect platform for us to give before we ask. What can we give to a prospect before we ask them for something? We can give them a like on their LinkedIn post. We can give them a comment, but not just a congrats, well done, but a comment that adds to the conversation that they have started. If our prospect is talking about something that's important to them and it has nothing to do with our business, I am more than willing to join into a conversation. David, think about it. If you and I were at a networking event, we're standing around talking, I would be more than willing to ask you questions about your business. If you said something, add to the conversation. Oh, what about this? Oh, this concept is very natural in person, but online, it becomes awkward. And we have to get past the awkwardness to recognize we have to have human behavior. So one of the things we do is leave a comment that acknowledges what the person said and then adds to the conversation without hijacking it. Jim, you make a great point. One of the things I like what you said is this. Here's my perspective on how that's worked, but I'm going to take some of that kind of conversation is so rare on LinkedIn that if you do that on one of your prospects' posts, you're going to stand out. Nobody leaves comments like that. And then the other one is to find ways of giving recognition. And I think I shared this with you when I was in person. And that is, if you have a prospect that's really hard to get hold of, maybe they don't post a lot on LinkedIn. Maybe they're an executive. Maybe they're kind of out there. They got gatekeepers. Well, on LinkedIn, there are no gatekeepers. So what you can do, let's suppose they were on a podcast. They were on a podcast with David Newman. And you've heard that podcast, but they didn't post anything on LinkedIn. So what you do is you'd write a post. I was recently listening to an interesting podcast with David Newman, and he had a guest, Susan Johnson. Susan made a really interesting point. Now, at this point, I have tagged Susan, my prospect, who does not know me, in my post. Susan gets notified that Richard Bliss has mentioned you in a post. David, what's the first question she asks herself?
Who the heck is this Bliss character?
So hard for me to handle, but yes, that is the first thing she asks herself. And then what's the first thing she does? She goes and sees what I'm saying about her. But what's interesting is I'm not talking about her. I'm not even talking to her. I'm simply taking something she said off of your show and I'm adding it to the conversation so that my audience can understand it. But I know that Susan's listening. And now I have given her something without asking. I've given her recognition. I've given her my attention. I've given her feedback. I've given her insights. All of this giving. Now, when the time comes for me to send that connection request, there's been 3, 4, 5 interactions we've had that have built that trust long before I sent the connection request, which is a oftentimes blind ask before a give. And so that's that kind of 3-step process that I teach and implement myself in order to build that trust so quickly on LinkedIn.
And you talk about, so this is the audience of one strategy, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So we want Susan to know that she is being appreciated, she is being cited or quoted as someone smart, someone reputable. There's a piece of content that she was involved in that we resonate with, and we are basically calling that to the attention of our audience, but we don't care if our audience ever sees it. We only care that Susan sees it.
Absolutely. We have to remember that's an audience of one. That's an account I'm going after. I want to make sure, but she doesn't feel singled out. Even though I did single her out, I'm not talking to her. I'm just using her. I mean, it could be anybody, right? It could
Yeah.
be Elon Musk. I could have referenced it could be anybody, but I
Right.
referenced her. And so in that capacity, she's feeling fairly comfortable that she's getting to know me a little bit and some trust is being built up.
Now you mentioned, I think the health regimen for this, if people are excited, and they really should be as they're listening to us, the regimen is do this 6 to 10 times a day with 6 to 10 prospects that you'd like to get some attention from.
Yeah, let's be clear on that. What I recommend is that I recognize also that salespeople are in the job of selling and they have other things to do than spend time on LinkedIn. My recommendation is 3 times a day, you go and leave a comment on a prospect, contact, anybody. Because here's something, David, that most people are not aware of. And that is, unlike the other social media platforms, when you leave a comment on LinkedIn, it does not stay between you and the person. LinkedIn actively picks that comment up and pushes it to a very large portion of your network so that every single comment you make on LinkedIn gets pushed to your audience. So when you say, congrats, you have missed a massive opportunity to talk to the bigger audience. Congrats on what?
Yeah.
Give us context. Explain why this is important to us, the listening audience, not just the person. And so, yeah, this is one of the key elements of making that effective is 3 times a day, take 5 minutes, go leave some comments, and do that for about 5 days every day for the week. When it comes to creating content, I recommend a minimum of once a week. So that one high profile target that you have, you can do that once a week. I won't get too far in the weeds, but there are some ways to modify that. There's always an exception to every rule, and even my rules. But let's suppose you've got 6 prospects that you've targeted. What you could do is pick a day, let's say Monday. Monday, you post 6 of those posts that I just described. You target Susan, you target Jeff, you target Sean, right? And you create those 6 posts. Now, something that also a lot of people don't know is if you do multiple posts on the same day, LinkedIn's pretty much going to shut down those posts and hide it from the vast majority of your audience.
Right.
You only get really one conversation a day in general.
Yeah.
Again, there's always exceptions. But if you do it all on Monday, like you said, I don't care how many people see this. I only care that one person sees it. And LinkedIn is not going to show all of my posts to all of my people. So nobody's even going to notice that I posted 6 times today,
Right.
but targeted a different individual each time. And so that's something to keep. That's another little technique, recognizing that I'm going to dramatically suppress my reach, but I only have a reach of 1. And so I pick a single day to do that. And then the rest of the days, I'm doing my regular cadence.
Now, one thing that we don't necessarily need to get into, because I know it's been covered and you covered brilliantly in other places, this whole concept of everyone sees the comments. The comments might intrigue some people to visit your profile. The profile needs to do the selling for you as far as who you are, your credibility, your track record, the about section. Let's talk about the about section only. There's all kinds of other smart things that I know you recommend. The about section is not a resume, or it should not be a resume. What is your best advice right now for folks to revise and revamp their about section if they're going to use some of these other strategies that we're also talking about?
Okay, a couple of things. One, that about section is, like you said, is not a cover letter. That is not a cover letter for your resume. Your LinkedIn profile is all about things from your past or current, but none of it is future looking. This is why it's so hard to get AI to write your about section on LinkedIn, because it's only going to take your past and talk about your past. And I got people saying, well, isn't that my point here? No. If I'm going to do business with you, whether as a partner, a customer, a prospect, an employee, an employer, it doesn't matter. I want to know what the future holds. And what do they say? Past performance doesn't guarantee right? Whatever that
That's
says.
right.
That means your about section needs to speak to your audience in such a way that they understand what it's going to be like moving forward in a business relationship with you. This is a forward-looking document. Couple of don'ts. Don't do it in third person. Don't do it, Richard Bliss has accomplished this and done this and blah, blah. I mean, that just turns people off because it's not personal. It's not me. Somebody else wrote it. The other don't is don't start with once upon a time. And what I mean by that is I started my career back when I was I thought about when I was in high school or back in college, or I started, 20 plus years in the industry, blah, blah, blah. Really, the fact that you started your career in the late 1900s is somehow supposed to impress us. No. Or as a recent graduate of the university, I'm really looking forward to the chance to learn. And, so you don't know anything, you're going to practice on me. Be very careful of our language so that we talk about the value we bring. And this is very hard for people to get their head wrapped around because we're so conditioned. But things like, if I'm a salesperson and I've been doing this for 20 plus years and I've been at, let's say, 6 different companies. Well, that might sound like I'm just jumping around. No, I could say, look, in my career, I've had the opportunity of working in the commercial, civilian, military, government space. And in this time, I've learned that there are 2 key ingredients to success for everything that we do when it comes to our customers. And then identify the 2 things that you feel are invaluable to building a relationship with your customers. Your customers now, as they're listening, are getting a feel for that. Your employer is going to get a feel for that. Your next business partner, they're all going to get a feel for what drives you. Or let's suppose you've been at the same company for 15 years. That means you've built up relationships and culture as an important aspect. Talk about that. In my career, having had the opportunity of dedicating myself to my customers in this time of the company that has really been focused, talk about that. So this approach to your LinkedIn needs to move away from specialties, skills, abilities. That's all in your profile. Instead, okay, tell me how you're going to use those skills, specialties, and abilities to impact my business or my relationship with you moving forward. And so that's a key difference. And you've heard me talk about this, and you maybe even heard me wing it while I pull up somebody's LinkedIn profile, and I've done it. Just go through and say, look, let's take out all of that language and shift it to a forward-looking language talking to the people you want to do business with.
And Richard, do you recommend that some of that about section, some of that professional profile is about trends impacting the industry or future predictions or busting some myths, sharing some truths? No?
Yes, and you mix some things in there. So trends, what's happening, put that in your featured section. It's a perfect opportunity because that changes. This year, what the trend is versus next year, right? Think about generative AI. And that last year, we were barely introduced to it. And this year, it's everywhere. So you said trends and things like that. Stay away from that. But things that are important to me, things that have motivated me, things that continue to help drive me forward. Yes, on a personal side. I also recommend what I call an Easter egg or a reward. I actually call it a reward. And that is at the very bottom, something in there personal that if somebody reads through that whole about section, and by the way, that about section should be about 3 paragraphs, not 3 lines. Give them something. So a client, a friend of mine I was just working with, and we got to the bottom, his name's Ted. Ted, what do you got? What is unique about him? And he said, well, I competed in statewide chess tournaments back when I was younger. Well, that's kind of cool. That's a unique. So we put that at the bottom. That way he knows if somebody says, hey, I noticed that you used to play chess in tournaments, that tells him immediately that person read his LinkedIn about section all the way to the bottom and found that out. So there's all kinds of little ways that you can personalize this so that people don't feel they're being pitched to, sold to, or somehow just ignored with some kind of generic, demonstrated history of the industry, whatever. No, tell people, this is what I'm good at, and this is why I'm good at it.
Human to human, right? Personal hobbies, something fun, something interesting about you, something unique.
Yeah, I've set world records playing board games. That always gets people fascinated about, really? And now that I think about it, I don't think I have that on my LinkedIn profile. But yes, I've set world records playing board games. And so that starts a conversation that has nothing to do with our business, but it builds that personal relationship over time.
Love it. Really, really great. Well, let's talk about what is coming down the pike, because I know that the curse of the LinkedIn expert is you say something or write something, or God forbid it's in a book that you write, it becomes obsolete the very next day or the very next week. It changes so fast, our favorite features disappear. This amazing new thing that we never even thought of comes online. So what's going away? What's staying? What's more important? What's less important? What does the future hold?
I want to say some caveats, but I'll just hold off. A couple of things that we need to understand when it comes to LinkedIn is that they have an overriding goal. And so all of these changes you see are driving towards that goal. And that goal is fundamentally different than Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, all of that. The goal on those platforms is to drive revenue through advertising, thereby making your content popular. The goal on LinkedIn is to continue to find ways to make your content relevant to the most important people in your network, connecting business professionals. That's their goal. So every time you see a feature change, it's driving towards that goal, or it's being pulled because it's interfering with that goal. So a couple of things that you're going to see. One that's ending at the end of this year is the little video that you're able to put for your profile, right? They're taking that away. Back in November, October, they removed the ability to create new ones. End of December, they'll actually be removing all of those videos. And then people are like, well, I love my video. Well, you loved it, but LinkedIn saw that it was being used to pitch, to change little video things. It wasn't being used to introduce yourself, which is originally what it was described for. So they're like, you know what? It's kind of being abused and it's not being used the way we anticipated. It's detracting. Let's pull it. Now, a lot of people liked it, but it was generally the person who created it who liked it, not the person watching the video. That's one. You're also seeing some changes. This past year, there's been a lot of screaming and yelling and gnashing of teeth on LinkedIn lately because the influencers, those who have these massive followings, I have a massive following, so careful here, but these are the ones who are driving that broetry. Broetry is that line space, line space, line space, line space, line space. Today, I had an interesting thought, space. This is what I was going to tell you, space. I hope you're really going to enjoy it, space. Right? They don't actually say it. It's called broetry. I refer to them as broetry bros. These broetry bros have been cut down to some degree and have seen a massive drop in the reach of their content on LinkedIn in 2023. And they are screaming bloody murder. How come I can't have it? LinkedIn's cut me down. This is terrible. Well, guess what? LinkedIn is not interested in your content going viral because going viral means you're reaching an irrelevant audience. They're interested in your content, continuing to stay focused on those who find it valuable. So they've made some massive changes to reduce the reach and the impact of that type of content that's just out there generating things. And so you're going to continue to see some of that.
So literally like space every other line.
Yes,
the algorithm says, broetry, and it almost takes it down to zero.
Not down to zero, but they're seeing a 30 to 50% cut in their reach.
Amazing.
But also you'll see comment. Sometimes we will see some of our research, 100 comments within the first 3 minutes of a post going live. And as I read, I've gone through and read some of those comments and they've gotten more sophisticated, but you can see the formula. And these are often being auto-generated by pods that are designed to do nothing but goose the algorithm, to fake the algorithm out, because the algorithm monitors and tracks comments more importantly than anything else. So by belonging to a pod, these individuals are posting their content, putting it in the pod, hundreds of people are responding. Well, LinkedIn knows that's all fake. And so those pods are being reduced in their effectiveness as well. And so as you start to look at this content, there's also a rumor, I'm not sure, this is a rumor, that links in the comments may be pulled out as well. The inability for you to put links in the comments.
Wow.
We'll see. That one I'm not buying into. It's just a rumor, but I don't think I'm buying into that one. But there is a reason for that, and that is to bypass the penalty. When you put a link in a post, it creates a 50% reduction in your reach of your audience.
Yeah.
Because LinkedIn has specifically said that when people come to LinkedIn, they have a certain amount of time and they have a certain purpose. If you have a link there that drives them somewhere else, you've used up the time they allocated for LinkedIn and it wasn't their purpose for being there. And so LinkedIn has really played a kind of a balance game with links, but everybody puts links in. So that's one of the challenges that you're seeing. So we're seeing those kinds of changes coming. I don't know if those are dramatic, David, but they at least make us think differently about how we're putting our content out there.
Now, just to clarify, I know that the last interview that I heard you on, I believe you said you can post the main post on LinkedIn, save it, come back, add the link, and then you avoid the penalty. Is that still true?
That is still true. And so the idea here, let me just restate what you just said. And that is let's say you have a link that you want to share. So you write up your post it, make it go live without the link included. Edit the post immediately. You don't have to wait 10 minutes or anything like that. and then just add the link at the bottom and resave. You won't be penalized. And also, before this past year, this was another change. You used to be penalized for editing your post. Now the research shows that you get about 2 edits for free without any penalty. And you don't have to wait. So you can make that. Now, here's something interesting you've heard me say, and that is when you do that, it fails to load the preview image. That's one of the things that happens if you do it that way.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. The research shows that when you use any kind of preview image, a stock image of any kind, it dramatically reduces the reach of your content, not because LinkedIn did it, but because your audience's response to stock images changes. And the algorithm is watching the audience's behavior and notices that the audience clicks the like button and moves on. Those preview images are getting in the way oftentimes of your audience engaging with your content in a conversation. Personal photos, those are great. And we're seeing a continued increase in the use of, and when I say personal, it doesn't have to be a selfie, but it has to be something where the picture itself is part of the story and not just a placeholder for an idea or a concept. This is why, by the way, those Instagram quote thingies, those motivational
quote memes.
Yeah. Those fail miserably on LinkedIn. Yeah. Now, somebody's going to be listening going, oh, I have tremendous success when I did. Okay, I appreciate it. There's always an outlier, but I'm telling you, for the rest of you, it doesn't work.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. Now, I had a very bad high school flashback a couple of years ago, and it was about LinkedIn Live. Like, only special people get LinkedIn Live, only the cool kids. And then one day, Richard, I got the email. David Newman, you now have LinkedIn Live. Come on down. You're now a member of the cool kids. Talk about live streaming on LinkedIn, past, present, future. Where's that going? Where is it today?
Okay, we're going to move into my opinion versus any kind of data. My opinion is that LinkedIn Live needs to be, you can use it, but it is okay, I got to be careful. I'm not a fan. Okay, I'm just going to say I'm not a fan. And it's not because I don't like video and I don't like live, but it's because in my world, you don't have the time to schedule real world consumption of content. Everything I do is time slipped. Everything. I watched the Warriors play basketball last night and it was time slipped. I record the game and then I pick it up, right? There's nothing I do live online. And so the idea of a live event, well, it gets recorded and other people can watch it later. Okay. But also very few people actually go back and watch content because we've got new stuff today. Why would I go back and watch stuff from yesterday? Anyway, my point here is that LinkedIn Live, if you have an audience and if you have a conversation that's interesting, you can bring people in if you give them the chance to interact, that type of thing. Live can be fun. Audio, I think, is actually the Clubhouse competitor that LinkedIn rolled out. I think that actually has a stronger play than LinkedIn Live video, in my personal opinion, because people get self-conscious about being on video. People worry about the audio, the sound. So audio, these live events are fun from our perspective, but only occasionally do they do well, and they have to have already audience driving it. A live event will not drive a new audience, but your audience that you have will appreciate on occasion a live event. So, because I've sat in on some LinkedIn Live events where they've gotten 2,000 people to participate. So I know that it works, but also the content was terrible because it was just a pitch story about how they can buy this product for LinkedIn and get 100 leads. And I was not happy with that pitch story. Sorry.
Right. No, it's really, really important. It's great. I mean, so you're sharing insights that may or may not be related to my question. And all I care is about the insights, really. So last question before we land the plane here. Let's talk about LinkedIn private messaging. This whole concept of quote unquote sell by chat on LinkedIn, which is really, really relationship building via private messaging. What are some do's and don'ts? What are some best practices that you advise your sales teams to engage in LinkedIn private messaging?
First, if you have LinkedIn Premium, you need to make sure that you've turned off open. And open is not open network, but it's the open to let anybody send you a message. I just discovered last week that I had that turned on and I get flooded. I block about 10 people a day from sending me LinkedIn spam. Now, since I've turned that off, it's gotten a lot better. But LinkedIn messaging, we tell our audience that's the last step of the relationship building. Hang on, let me clarify that. You already heard me say this little formula: like, comment, post, reference. Now you can use the messaging to actually, hey, we've been engaging. Can I have a connection request? That connection request now allows me to communicate, but really avoid the pitching, selling, pitching, selling, pitching, selling. That is not why we're on LinkedIn. And just because I accept a connection request from you does not mean I granted you permission to spam me. And people forget that. Here's something else that people might not be aware of. When you purchase Premium or Sales Navigator, you get a certain number of credits. These credits accrue every month, up to 3 months of accrual. These credits allow you to send an unsolicited message to anyone on LinkedIn for free. Well, for free. You have to have Premium or Sales Navigator.
Right.
Here's the thing. If you get a message from somebody and then respond to them, please stop sending me these emails, you have given them their credit back. By responding to these unsolicited messages, you are rewarding them with the ability to do it again. So I've had kind of people that, well, I don't want to be rude. Why not? They were already rude first, right? They've intruded on you. This ask before giving. And so one of the things to think about is using that sparingly to already have built the relationship and now as a means of maintaining communication. Do not use it. Now, in my case, I presented last week to a member of LinkedIn's legal staff. And I had to be careful because one of the pieces of advice I offer is against the terms of service of LinkedIn. And that is, you are not allowed to have any external characters in your name, first name and last name.
Yeah.
If you look at my LinkedIn, I have a small dot. That dot goes in front of my first name. Now, technically, it's not allowed to be there. They haven't said anything so far, and I'm trying to just kind of stay under so don't tell anybody, David, okay? But I've got this dot. All right, That means when I receive a connection request or an in-mail from someone and it says, "Hi, Richard, I noticed that we have a bunch of people in common." Or, "Hi, I was hoping that we could connect." It immediately tells me that a bot is being employed to scrape and send me a message. And so I use that that's why you have that dot in front of my name. But it's these in-mail messages or messages back and forth that are being abused right now. I suspect that LinkedIn is going to take steps in 2024 to address this new threat to the quality of their experience on their platform. And that is all of these people. And what you do is, what's nice is you get this new certification that was added just recently. You can use government documents, US only, government documents to validate this is who I am. And so when I get a connection request, if they look semi-interesting, I can go see when the account was created. And oftentimes it was a few months ago, October of 2023.
Right.
Sorry, but I'm probably not accepting that connection request. And so those are some things to be aware of. And I think LinkedIn's going to start cracking down on that practice.
Really, really great. Well, I know people are going to want to get connected and stay connected to more Richard Bliss brilliance. Where can we send people? How can people get connected to you?
They can follow me on LinkedIn by going to LinkedIn, Richard Bliss. It's linkedin.com/in/Bliss. That's my direct URL. You can find me on Twitter, Richard Bliss. I have to admit, though, I spend very little time out there anymore. And then you can go to my website, blisspointconsult.com is an easy way. And tell you what, David, I know the people listening here might even want to talk to me directly, so they can email me. My email address is rbliss@blisscorp.com. My team gives me a hard time that from a branding standpoint, none of our URLs match, but BlissCorp, BLISSCORP.com is rbliss, is a way for them to reach out if they want to contact me directly.
Brilliant. And all of those links will be in the show notes directly under this episode. So tell the team, don't worry. All of the links are going to be one click away directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Richard Bliss, you are a rock star. I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing so many value bombs with us. I appreciate you a lot.
David, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.